Good evening. Take a deep breath, slowly, letting the air enter gently through your lungs, feeling how it fills every space, every corner, every small cavity of your chest. Release. Allow the exhalation to be even slower than the inspiration, like water flowing down a gentle slope, without haste, without urgent destination. Allow your body to find the most comfortable position, the one in which the muscles begin to unlearn the tension, as if each fiber remembered a previous state, simpler, lighter, closer to the earth and to silence. Tonight, on this quiet evening, you will be invited on a delicate journey through the most extraordinary organ that nature has ever created, the human brain. This is not a technical or cold trip, but a serene walk through internal landscapes made of electrical impulses, chemicals of calm, and memories that float like petals on the surface of a still lake. There are no rigid maps here. There are no stopwatches marking time. There is only gentle curiosity, contemplation, the fascination with the mystery that you carry inside your skull. The brain you carry, protected by layers of tissue and fluid, is both the observer and the observed. It is the library and the librarian. It is the composer and the music. It is the poet and the poem. And at this moment, as you read or listen to these words, it is performing millions of invisible operations, preparing for rest, adjusting the chemistry of sleep, orchestrating the relaxation of each system of the body. You don't need to do anything. Just be here, breathing, present, as we unravel together some of the most comforting secrets about this silent wonder that inhabits your head and guides your existence. There is something deeply peaceful in understanding that the brain is not just an organ of accelerated thinking and urgent decisions. It is also, and perhaps mainly, a master of stillness, an expert in silence, a guardian of sleep and dreams. When the daylight fades and the shadows lengthen across the walls of the room, the brain begins to dance an ancestral choreography, as old as the first mammals who learned to close their eyes under the protection of the night. And you participate in this dance now, gently, effortlessly, just allowing it to happen, as it happened yesterday, as it will happen tomorrow, as it has happened since you were born. Let's walk together then through 7 relaxing facts about the human brain, 7 discoveries that calm the mind while illuminating it, 7 doors to enchantment and serenity. There is no rush. Each revelation will come in its time, like a wave that reaches the beach and returns to the sea, leaving only the gentle mark of its passage on the sand. Like a bird that lands on the branch, sings its song, and departs again for the sky. Like the breath that comes in and out, without ever rushing. Before we begin this journey, it's worth just feeling for a moment the miracle of being conscious. The simple fact that you can read these words, process them, understand their meanings, feel the emotions they evoke, all this is the result of brain processes of staggering complexity. Billions of neurons firing in coordinated patterns, trillions of synapses transmitting signals with chemical precision, electrical waves running through the brain tissue like music through a living instrument. And yet, you don't feel this complexity. You simply are conscious, simply perceive, simply exist, knowing that you exist. There is something deeply mysterious about this, something that science has not yet fully explained. How does matter, neurons made of atoms, molecules organized into cells, become capable of subjective experience? How does the brain create the feeling of being you? These questions remain without complete answer, but what we know is enough to fill us with awe and gratitude. The brain works tirelessly to create your experience of reality, to stitch sensations into coherent perceptions, to transform waves of light into vision, vibrations in the air into sound, pressure on the skin into touch. And it does it all with such elegance that you don't even notice the process, just the result, a rich, colorful world full of meaning. Have you ever stopped to feel the weight of silence inside your head? Not the external silence, the one that depends on the absence of noise in the environment, but the internal one, deep, the space between one thought and another, between one sensation and the next. It's a living silence, pulsating, full of potential. It is the silence from which words arise before they are spoken. It is the silence that exists between the musical notes, giving shape to the melody. It is the silence that the brain knows so well, although you rarely pay attention to it. The human brain, with all its seemingly chaotic complexity, has entire networks dedicated to rest. They are called default mode networks, and they function like secret gardens where the mind rests while believing it is awake. These networks were discovered almost by chance when neuroscientists realized that even when a person was not performing any specific task, certain areas of the brain remained active. They were not sleeping, they were not idle, they were busy with something different, something more subtle. The discovery happened in an interesting way. Researchers were using functional magnetic resonance imaging to study the brain during specific tasks. They compared brain activity during these tasks with control periods, where participants simply rested without doing anything in particular. The expectation was that the brain at rest would show low activity, almost like a computer in standby mode. But what they found was surprising. During these periods of apparent rest, certain regions of the brain became extraordinarily active. More than that, these regions seemed to be talking to each other, forming a coordinated network. It was like discovering that the stage, when the lights go out and the audience leaves, is not empty. There is a different play being staged, a private play that no one in the audience sees. When you are not focused on any specific task, when your eyes wander out the window watching the clouds go by, when you just breathe without thinking about breathing, when you are lying looking at the ceiling with no particular intention, these networks become gently active. They are not idle. On the contrary, they work in silence, integrating memories, reorganizing emotions, stitching past experiences to the sense of self, weaving the tapestry of identity with invisible threads. It's as if the brain takes advantage of these moments of apparent distraction to tidy up the internal house, putting each memory in its place, each sensation in its appropriate drawer, each experience on its corresponding shelf. There is order in this, although it is not an order that you can consciously control. It is an order that emerges naturally, like the stars arrange themselves in constellations, like the trees are distributed in a forest, like the rivers find their paths through the mountains. These default mode networks do something particularly fascinating. They construct narratives. They take fragments of memory, current sensations, future expectations, and weave stories that make sense of experience. When you find yourself thinking about something that happened yesterday, imagining how a conversation could have been different, or vaguely planning something for tomorrow, it is this network working. It is constantly building and rebuilding the sense of who you are, where you came from, where you are going. There is something deeply comforting in this. The brain is never truly still, but it is also never alone in its wakefulness. It knows when to rest within its own functioning. It knows when to slow down, even if you don't consciously realize it. These default mode networks are living proof that the human mind is structured for contemplation, for quiet wandering, for the gentle daydream that precedes sleep. You were not made only for action and conquest. You were also made for rest and integration. Scientists have discovered that these networks consume up to 80% of the brain's energy at rest. That's extraordinary when you stop to think. It means that even when you think you're not thinking about anything, that you're wasting time, that you should be doing something productive, the brain is deeply occupied with itself, not with the outside world. It turns inward, like a flower closing at dusk, protecting its delicate center. And this turning inward is not waste. It's maintenance, it's care, it's restoration. It's how the brain prepares for what comes next, be it a new day, be it a night of deep dreams. You can feel this now if you pay attention. As you read these lines, there are moments when your mind drifts slightly away from the words and floats elsewhere. Perhaps a childhood memory arises uninvited, the smell of rain on a specific day, the sound of a loved one's voice, the feeling of grass under bare feet. Maybe the memory of a specific smell, of a season, of a loved one. Perhaps just the sensation of the air touching your skin, the weight of your body on the surface where you are, the distant sound of something you didn't even know you were hearing. And then you return. This back and forth movement is the dance of the default mode networks. It is the brain practicing its most natural way of being, present and absent at the same time, awake and dreaming in the same instant. There are fascinating studies showing that people with more active default mode networks tend to be more creative, more able to solve problems in innovative ways. This makes sense when you think about it. Creativity often comes not from concentrated effort, but from moments of wandering, when the mind is free to make unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. Think of the great moments of discovery in human history. Archimedes in the bathtub, shouting "Eureka" when the solution to a problem arose not during intense work, but during a moment of relaxation. Newton under the apple tree, absent-mindedly watching when the apple fell. Einstein conducting his thought experiments, letting his mind wander through impossible scenarios. All these moments happened when the default mode network was active, when the brain was free to explore without the constraint of focused attention. This discovery brought neuroscientists a new and gentler understanding about the nature of the mind. We are not machines of constant attention. We were not made for uninterrupted vigilance. We were not designed by evolution to be always alert, always focused, always productive. We were made for rhythm, for alternation, for the flow between focus and drift. And the brain, wise in its architecture, already knew this long before we invented devices to measure it, long before we had words to describe these processes. There is beauty in knowing that distraction is not a flaw, that daydreaming is not weakness, that those moments when you get lost in vague thoughts, when the mind wanders without specific direction, are actually the brain being exactly what it should be, an organ not only of calculation and decision, but also of dreaming and silent integration. An organ that knows, instinctively, when it's time to look outward and when it's time to look inward. An organ that understands, on a deeper level than any reason, that life is not just doing, but also being. And in this moment, as you allow these words to gently lead you through the night, the default mode networks of your brain are active, working in layers you don't need to control, in dimensions you don't need to fully understand. They are preparing the ground for sleep, organizing the experiences of the day, preparing the body and mind for the quiet surrender that comes with falling asleep. You don't need to do anything. Just be here. Just breathe. Just allow the brain to do what it knows how to do best. Take care of you, even when you're not paying attention. Think about that for a moment. There is within you an entire system dedicated to active rest, to silent processing, to gentle integration. It's like having an internal gardener who works in the quiet hours when you're not looking, trimming here, planting there, watering yonder. And in the morning, you wake up to a more organized, more beautiful, more integrated garden, without having moved a single conscious muscle for it. The brain does this for you. Does this to you. Does this because that is its essential nature. Imagine the brain as a vast city. During the day, the main streets are busy, full of traffic, people going from one place to another with definite purpose. These are the areas that process sensory information, that make decisions, that perform actions. But when night falls and the movement slows down, other workers come out. Not the ones everyone sees, but those who maintain the infrastructure, who clean, who repair, who prepare everything for the next day. These are the default mode networks, working behind the scenes, essential but invisible. And just as a city needs these quiet hours of maintenance, the brain needs these moments of apparent inactivity. It needs the intervals between tasks. It needs the moments of looking out the window. It needs the instants of purposeless wandering. It's not a waste of time. It's investment in future functionality. It's preparation for creativity. It's maintenance of mental health. Now, let's delve deeper into one of the most curious and reassuring facts about how the brain works during relaxation and sleep. Did you know that the human brain has its own cleaning system, which works mainly while you sleep? It's called the glymphatic system, a delicate network of microscopic channels that runs throughout the brain tissue, carrying with it metabolic waste products, misfolded proteins, and other substances that accumulate during the day, during the hours of wakefulness and activity. During wakefulness, as you think, feel, move, and process the world, as you make decisions, solve problems, talk to people, read information, the brain is constantly active, burning energy, producing byproducts. It's like a bustling city where, over the hours, paper accumulates on the streets, leaves on the sidewalks, dust in the corners, remnants of activity everywhere. The city works, thrives, pulsates with life, but it also produces waste. And just as a city, every city needs a cleaning system to keep functioning properly, and the brain has its own too. The fascinating difference is that this system only works fully when you are in deep rest, when consciousness dissolves and the body completely relaxes. The discovery of the glymphatic system is relatively recent in the history of neuroscience, happening only in 2012. For a long time, scientists wondered how the brain, this metabolically active organ, so demanding in terms of energy, managed to remove its waste. Other organs in the body have the lymphatic system, a network of vessels that drains fluids and removes toxins. But the brain, protected by the blood-brain barrier, seemed to have no access to this system. That's when researchers led by Maiken Nedergaard discovered that the brain has its own system, unique and elegant. They called it the glymphatic system, a combination of glia, the support cells of the brain, and lymphatic. And what they discovered was extraordinary in its simplicity and efficiency. While you sleep, something extraordinary happens. Something that scientists have only recently discovered in the last few decades. The brain cells, the neurons and glial cells that make up the nervous tissue shrink slightly, increasing the space between them. It's not a dramatic or harmful shrinkage. It's subtle, delicate, intentional. This increase in space, about 60%, allows cerebrospinal fluid, that transparent fluid that surrounds the brain and spinal cord, to flow more quickly through the tissues, washing everything away, carrying out accumulated toxins, cleaning the interstitial spaces. It's as if, when you fall asleep, you open the floodgates of an internal irrigation system, allowing clean waters to flow through every valley, every hill, every hidden corner of the brain's landscape. The fluid enters through channels that follow the arteries, circulates through the brain tissue, collects waste, and exits through channels that follow the veins, carrying away what is no longer needed. It's a complete wash, a total renewal, a microscopic rebirth that happens every night, whenever you allow sleep to do its job. Cerebrospinal fluid is fascinating in itself. It is produced continuously within the brain, in structures called the choroid plexuses, at a rate of about half a liter per day. It is crystal clear, colorless, and serves multiple functions. It protects the brain from physical impacts, acts as a buffer, provides nutrients, removes waste. But its function in the glymphatic system, discovered only recently, may be one of the most important. This process is silent, invisible, and completely automatic. You don't need to think about it, you don't need to monitor it, you don't need to supervise each step. It simply happens, night after night, from the first sleep of your life until now, until the last sleep that will come decades in the future. And there is something deeply comforting in knowing that. While you rest, while consciousness fades and dreams float through your mind, the brain is taking care of itself, renewing itself, cleansing itself, preparing for the next day with the same patient dedication of a gardener who prunes the plants at dawn, of a janitor who cleans the halls during the night. Researchers have found that lack of sleep disrupts this cleaning system, allowing toxins to accumulate in brain tissue. One of these toxins is particularly worrying: beta amyloid, a protein that, when it accumulates in excess, is associated with Alzheimer's disease. During sleep, the glymphatic system removes beta amyloid efficiently, but when sleep is insufficient or of poor quality, this removal does not happen adequately. Studies with animals have shown that glymphatic flow during deep sleep is about 10 times faster than during wakefulness. It's a dramatic difference, which illustrates how crucial sleep is for maintaining brain health. It's not just about feeling rested, it's about literally cleaning the brain of substances that, if accumulated, can cause long-term damage. These accumulated toxins can affect mood, making a person more irritable, more anxious, less able to regulate emotions effectively. They can affect mental clarity, making thinking slower, memory more faulty, concentration more difficult, as if a fog has settled over cognitive processes. And in the long term, chronic lack of sleep can contribute to more serious brain health problems because the cleaning system never has a chance to do its job completely, like a city that never has its waste collected properly. But the opposite is also true, and that's the truly comforting part. Each night of restful sleep is a night in which the brain completely renews itself, eliminating what is no longer needed, preparing for a new beginning. There is another fascinating and deeply calming aspect about the human brain: the way it responds to gentle stimuli and repetitive. Have you ever noticed how the sound of rain is calming? How the steady rhythm of the drops falling on the roof, on the window, on the ground seems to slow down thought and induce a pleasant drowsiness? Or how the sight of waves breaking on the beach, one after another, in a predictable and constant rhythm, seems to clear the mind of worries. This is no coincidence, nor is it just personal preference or cultural conditioning. It is something rooted in the very structure of the nervous system, something that comes from far back in evolutionary history. The human brain evolved in environments where repetitive and predictable patterns generally indicated safety. Think of our ancestors living on African savannas hundreds of thousands of years ago. The constant sound of a stream meant available water and the absence of imminent danger, because approaching predators would break that pattern with their movements, creating sudden silences or discordant sounds. The rhythmic swaying of trees in the wind signaled that there were no violent storms coming, that it was safe to rest, that there was no need to flee or hide. The gentle crackling of a campfire at night brought warmth and protection, warding off predators and creating a circle of safety where the group could relax. These patterns became deeply ingrained in neural wiring over millions of years of evolution. It is a legacy from times long before modern humans. Even our distant mammalian ancestors, small furry creatures living in the shadow of dinosaurs, recognized safety and predictable patterns. And even today, even living in completely different environments, in cities of concrete and glass, in homes with technology and modern comforts, these patterns continue to activate relaxation responses in the brain. It's as if the oldest part of the brain, The one that evolved when our ancestors still lived in caves and forests, still recognizes these signals and knows exactly how to respond to them. When you hear a repetitive and gentle sound, the brain doesn't need to be on alert. There is no unexpected novelty that could indicate danger. There is no threat emerging from nowhere that requires immediate reaction. There is no need to analyze each stimulus as if it were unique and potentially dangerous, diverting precious cognitive resources to threat assessment. The pattern is known, predictable, safe. And this allows the autonomic nervous system, the one that controls involuntary functions such as heartbeat, breathing, blood pressure, digestion, to gradually shift from the sympathetic mode, associated with alertness and action, with fight or flight, to the parasympathetic mode, associated with rest and digestion, with relaxing and recovering. The autonomic nervous system is fascinating in its ancient wisdom. It operates completely outside of consciousness, making decisions every second about how to allocate body resources. When it detects danger, real or perceived, it triggers the sympathetic mode. The heart accelerates, pumping blood quickly to the muscles. Breathing becomes rapid and shallow. The pupils dilate to capture more light. Digestion is paused because there is no time to process food when survival is at stake. The whole body prepares for intense action. But when the environment signals safety through repetitive and predictable patterns, the system gradually shifts to the parasympathetic mode. It's like shifting gears in a car, moving from speed to calm. This shift is not instantaneous. It's not like flipping a switch. It is gradual, gentle, progressive, like the transition between day and night, like the tide rising or falling on the beach over hours. But it is real, measurable with scientific instruments that detect subtle changes in physiology. The heart rate slows down, beat by beat, until it finds a slower and more regular rhythm, a rhythm that conserves energy instead of spending it preparing the body for flight or fight. Breathing deepens, each inhalation bringing more oxygen to the lungs, each exhalation releasing more carbon dioxide, and with it, accumulated tension. Blood pressure drops slightly, reducing the effort the heart needs to make to pump blood through the arteries. The muscles relax, fiber by fiber, letting go of the unnecessary contraction that keeps the body tense and ready for action. And the brain, perceiving these bodily changes through internal sensors scattered throughout the organism, through nerves that constantly send information about the state of organs and tissues, interprets them as signs that everything is okay, that it is safe to lower the guard, that it is time to rest. The body and mind are not separate entities operating independently. They constantly talk to each other, influencing each other in complex feedback loops, creating cycles that can lead both to increasing anxiety and to deep relaxation. And repetitive patterns are one of the most effective ways to initiate and maintain the relaxation loop. That is the reason why so many relaxation techniques, developed independently in different cultures around the world over thousands of years, use repetition. Whether in breathing, counting inhales and exhales in a constant rhythm, keeping attention on the regular pattern, whether in music, using simple and repetitive melodies that create a sense of predictability and safety, whether in visualization, imagining waves coming and going, rising and falling eternally, whether in movement, swaying gently back and forth like a child being rocked. Repetition calms because it communicates to the brain an ancestral message of safety, a message that has been understood by mammalian brains for millions of years. And the brain, in response, allows the entire body to relax, allows the guard to drop, allows sleep to approach like an inevitable wave. You can feel this now, at this very moment, if you pay attention to your own breathing without trying to change it. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Each cycle is a pattern, a repetition, an echo of the previous one. And with each repetition, the body learns a little more about calm, about relaxation, about safety. It is not necessary to force anything. It is not necessary to try to control every aspect of breathing, making it deeper or slower artificially. Just observe. Just allow the pattern to do its work, to let the rhythm gently lead you towards calmer states, more receptive to the rest that is coming. Interestingly, and this has been discovered through recent research in neuroscience, the brain also responds similarly to repetitive visual stimuli. Observing flames dancing in a campfire or fireplace, with their constant but never exactly the same movements, hypnotic in their variation within repetition. Observing leaves moving gently in the wind, rising and falling, turning and returning, in a dance that seems choreographed but is completely natural. Observing water flowing in a stream, always in motion but always present, always changing but always essentially the same. All these stimuli have the same fundamental calming effect. They capture attention without requiring intense cognitive effort. They occupy the conscious mind with something gentle and pleasant, allowing the deeper layers of the psyche to relax, allowing the worries of the day to dissolve temporarily like fog under the sun. This explains why so many cultures around the world have developed meditative practices based on repetitive focus. Whether in the repetition of mantras, words, or sacred phrases repeated indefinitely like fog under the sun. Whether in the contemplation of mandalas, circular geometric patterns that draw the eye to the center repeatedly. Whether in the constant rhythm of walking in circles, as in Buddhist walking meditation practices, where each step is identical to the previous one. All these practices use the same fundamental principle discovered through millennia of human experimentation. The brain calms down in the face of safe repetition, in the face of the known pattern, in the face of the quiet predictability that signals the absence of threat. And the most beautiful, the most accessible thing about all this is that you don't need external tools to access this state of calm. You don't need special apps, expensive equipment, perfectly silent environments. The body itself offers repetitive patterns always available. The beating of the heart, which pulses constantly from before you are born until the final moment of life, never stopping, always reliable. The rhythm of breathing, which goes in and out, never stopping, except in the briefest moments between inhalation and exhalation. The sensation of blood pulsing in the veins, especially noticeable in the fingertips, in the temples, in the neck when you pay attention. By directing attention to these internal rhythms, you are, essentially, using the body as an instrument of meditation, allowing the brain to recognize the pattern, feel safe, and relax deeply without needing anything external. There are studies showing that even listening to your own amplified heartbeat can induce states of relaxation in some people. It's as if the brain, when hearing this pattern so fundamental, so constant, so intimately connected with life, automatically interprets it as a sign that everything is working as it should, that there is no emergency, that it is safe to rest. This ability to calm oneself through repetition is an evolutionary gift. It is a self-regulation mechanism built into the very design of the nervous system that has evolved over millions of years. And it is available to you at any time, anywhere, in any situation, just waiting for you to pay attention, to choose to focus on the pattern. That you allow it to guide you to a calmer, more centered, more present state, more prepared for the sleep that will come naturally when all conditions are right. At this moment, as you are here, you may already feel the effects of this repetition working on your nervous system. The words flow at a steady rhythm, like waves reaching the beach, one after the other, predictable but always slightly different. The phrases unfold in a recognizable pattern, like breaths following breaths, like heartbeats following heartbeats. And the brain, recognizing this pattern on a deep and nonverbal level, in brain structures older than language, begins to relax, begins to release the tensions of the day like sand slipping through your fingers, begins to prepare for the rest that is to come, as certain as night follows day, as inevitable as the tide that rises and falls. There is also a wonderful, deeply hopeful fact about brain plasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt throughout life. For a long time, for most of the history of neuroscience, it was believed that the adult brain was fixed, immutable, rigid in its structure, that the neural pathways established in childhood and adolescence remained unchanged until death. It was thought that you were born with a certain number of neurons, lost some inevitably over the course of life through aging and minor damage, but could not create new ones or significantly reorganize existing connections. It was a pessimistic, deterministic view, suggesting that we are prisoners of our own neurology. But modern science, especially in recent decades, has revealed something much more hopeful, much more beautiful, much more liberating. The human brain is plastic. Not in the material sense of the word, not made of plastic like a manufactured object, but in the functional sense. It can change shape, it can reorganize itself, it can adapt continuously. It can create new connections between neurons through processes called synaptogenesis. It can strengthen existing pathways by making synapses more efficient through long-term potentiation. It can reorganize entire circuits in response to experience, learning, deliberate practice. Every time you learn something new, whether it's a physical skill like playing an instrument or playing a sport, an intellectual concept like understanding a complex scientific theory, or an emotional pattern like responding calmly to situations that previously triggered anxiety, the brain changes physically, not metaphorically, not symbolically, physically, measurably, concretely. Every time you practice a skill, whatever it may be, certain synapses are strengthened through complex molecular processes involving neurotransmitters, receptors, structural proteins. The connections between specific neurons become more efficient, requiring less energy to transmit signals, responding more quickly to stimuli, creating pathways of less resistance. It's like a path in the forest that, the more it is traveled, the clearer and easier to follow it becomes, with the vegetation being gradually removed by the constant traffic of feet. And every time you stop using a neural pathway, it gradually weakens through a process called synaptic pruning, not by damage or death necessarily, but by lack of maintenance and reinforcement, freeing up space and metabolic resources for other connections that are being used more, and therefore seem more important to the brain. This means something profound and tremendously liberating when you really absorb its implications. You are not stuck with the patterns of thought and behavior that you have developed so far in your life. You are not doomed to repeat forever the same mental cycles, the same automatic emotional reactions, the same destructive or limiting habits. The brain, with its plasticity that seems almost infinite in its potential, offers the constant possibility of change, of growth, of transformation. And this does not end in youth. It doesn't end in adolescence when the brain reaches its adult size. It doesn't end at 30 or 40 or 50 or even 70 years old. It continues throughout life, as long as the brain is alive and functioning until the final moments. There is something deeply comforting in this idea when you really allow it to sink in. No matter how many years you have lived, no matter how long you have carried certain habits or thoughts that you would like to change, the brain can still change. It can still learn new ways of being. It can still adapt to new circumstances. It can still create new paths, new possibilities, new ways of experiencing and responding to the world. And this change does not require superhuman heroic effort or suffer extreme improvement. It happens naturally, organically, through gentle repetition, patient and consistent practice, regular exposure to new experiences, new thoughts, new ways of responding to the world. Think about this for a moment. Allow this truth to really settle into your awareness. Every time you choose to respond differently to a familiar situation, every time you break a habitual pattern, you are creating a new neural pathway, a new pattern of connections in the brain that did not exist before. Every time you practice calm instead of anxiety, breathing deeply and choosing a thoughtful response when you would normally panic or react impulsively, you are strengthening the circuits of relaxation and emotional regulation, making it easier and more automatic to access calm the next time a similar situation arises. Every time you choose gratitude instead of complaining, intentionally focusing on what is good in your life instead of what is missing or wrong, you are sculpting a brain more inclined to positivity, more prepared to see the bright side of things, more capable of finding meaning and beauty even in difficult circumstances. And the opposite is also true, but this doesn't have to be a cause for despair or self-criticism. Every time you reinforce negative thought patterns, mentally repeating worries and fears without taking constructive action, you are strengthening those neural pathways of negativity. Every time you practice constant worry, obsessively ruminating on bad possibilities that may never materialize, you are teaching the brain to worry more easily, to find dangers and threats where they may not really exist. But here's the good news, the truly comforting news that should bring hope. You can undo this. Not immediately, not magically with a snap of your fingers or a single heroic decision, but gradually, through the consistent practice of new patterns, new thoughts, new ways of being that you choose to cultivate day after day. The brain does not morally judge your choices. It has no ethical preferences. It does not differentiate between a useful mental habit and a harmful one based on human values. It simply strengthens what is repeated, whether good or bad, whether healthy or destructive, whether productive or limiting. And that puts enormous power in your hands, a tremendous responsibility, but also an incredible opportunity. The power to shape your own mind through the choices you make, thought by thought, moment by moment, day after day, year after year. It is not a power that is exercised all at once. It is not an instant transformation. It is a power that accumulates slowly, imperceptibly, like drops of water carving stone over centuries, like wind shaping mountains over millennia. This brain plasticity is especially active during sleep, working at levels that consciousness cannot directly access. While you rest, while consciousness withdraws and dreams float through the mind like clouds crossing the sky, the brain consolidates the day's learning, strengthening the synapses that were activated during wakefulness through complex molecular processes, weakening those that were not used through synaptic pruning, reorganizing entire circuits based on recent experiences and their relative importance. It's as if sleep is the sacred time when the brain reviews everything that has happened in the last hours since the last sleep, decides what is worth keeping permanently in the brain structure, what can be temporarily or forever forgotten, and integrates these memories and new skills into the permanent structure of the mind, weaving them into the tapestry of identity. Therefore, when you learn something new during the day and then sleep on it, allowing sleep to do its work of consolidation, the skill integrates more deeply, becomes more automatic, more accessible than if you had stayed awake studying or practicing nonstop. Knowledge integrates into the existing neural network, connecting to old memories in ways that create deeper understanding, creating new associations that enrich both the new knowledge and the old ones. The brain uses the precious hours of sleep to transform raw experience into integrated wisdom, mechanical practice into fluid competence, strange novelty into comfortable familiarity. It's not just passive rest, it's active transformation. It's growth happening in silence while you're not looking, while you're completely unaware of the intricate process that is shaping who you will be tomorrow. And there is a deep kindness in this process, a compassion built into the very structure of the nervous system that has evolved to take care of you. You don't need to.
Quando você se sente compelido a estender a mão para ajudar, quando você experimenta o sofrimento alheio como se fosse seu, essa capacidade de sofrer com o outro, de sentir a dor alheia como se fosse sua, é a base da compaixão. É a força motriz por trás de todo ato genuíno de altruísmo. É o que nos torna humanos no sentido mais profundo da palavra.
E a ressonância neural, essa capacidade de nossos cérebros se sintonizarem com os cérebros dos outros, é o mecanismo fundamental que torna a empatia possível, que nos permite transcender a barreira da pele e experimentar a realidade subjetiva dos outros como se fosse nossa. Mas essa sincronia cerebral não é sempre benéfica, não é sempre um caminho para a conexão e a compaixão. Ela também pode ser usada para manipulação, para controle mental, para a disseminação de ideias tóxicas e comportamentos destrutivos. Quando você está exposto repetidamente a mensagens negativas, a narrativas de ódio, a ideologias extremistas, seu cérebro começa a se sintonizar com os cérebros daqueles que propagam essas ideias. Seus padrões neurais começam a se alinhar com os deles. Você começa a internalizar crenças e valores que podem ser profundamente prejudiciais para você e para os outros. A mente é incrivelmente suscetível a influências externas, especialmente quando essas influências são exercidas de forma sutil, constante e repetitiva. É por isso que é tão importante proteger sua mente de informações tóxicas, cercar-se de pessoas positivas e construtivas, cultivar o pensamento crítico e autonomia intelectual, para que você possa escolher conscientemente com quais cérebros você deseja se sincronizar e quais você deseja evitar. Em um mundo cada vez mais conectado, onde somos constantemente bombardeados com informações de todos os lados, onde as mídias sociais e os algoritmos de recomendação nos expõem seletivamente a conteúdos que confirmam nossos preconceitos e nos isolam em bolhas ideológicas, é mais importante do que nunca estar ciente da nossa vulnerabilidade à sincronia cerebral, da nossa tendência natural a nos sintonizarmos com os cérebros dos outros, mesmo quando esses cérebros estão nos levando para caminhos perigosos. A capacidade de resistir à influência social, de pensar por si mesmo, de manter a independência intelectual e emocional, é uma das habilidades mais valiosas que você pode cultivar na era moderna. E a chave para desenvolver essa habilidade é entender como seu cérebro funciona, como ele se conecta com os outros, como ele pode ser manipulado e como você pode protegê-lo de influências nocivas. Doing anything consciously to make this consolidation happen, you don't need to direct the consolidation of memories like a manager micromanaging employees. You don't need to instruct the brain on which synapses to strengthen and which to weaken. You don't need to supervise the neural reorganization with vigilant attention. You don't need to micromanage every aspect of the transformation that is happening. The brain does it all on its own, with a wisdom much older than any conscious knowledge, with an intelligence that predates language and abstract thought by millions of years, while you simply rest, trusting in the natural process that has been happening faithfully every night since the beginning of your life. Knowing this can profoundly change your relationship with sleep, transforming it from a boring obligation into a sacred opportunity. It is not wasted time that could be used to produce more, to do more things, to accumulate more achievements or money. It is time for essential growth. It is not an absence of useful mental activity. It is the presence of a different activity, deeper, more transformative, more essential to who you are and who you are becoming. Each night is a precious opportunity for the brain to remake itself, reorganize itself, prepare itself to be a slightly different, slightly better, slightly more adapted version of itself, building on the past while opening itself to the future. And this constant change, this plasticity that seems almost infinite, is also a profound philosophical reminder that nothing is completely fixed in the universe. Not your brain, not your mind, not your personality, not your destiny or future. Everything is a dynamic process. Everything is constant flow. Everything is open possibility, unrealized potential waiting for the right conditions to emerge, like seeds waiting for spring. And the brain, with its magical and almost miraculous ability to continually reshape itself, is living proof of this fundamental truth about existence: that change is not only possible, but inevitable; that transformation is not only desirable, but natural; that you are not condemned to be forever who you were yesterday. Let's now explore an even more subtle and fascinating aspect of the human brain: its extraordinary capacity to synchronize with other brains, creating connections that transcend the apparent separation between individuals. When two people talk deeply, sharing not only information but emotional states, when a group of musicians plays together in perfect harmony without needing to constantly look at each other, when a mother soothes a crying baby only with her presence and touch, when friends share comfortable silence that doesn't need to be filled with words, something extraordinary happens at the neural level, something that defies the common idea that we are completely separate entities from each other, isolated in our own bubbles of consciousness. Brains begin to synchronize, activating similar patterns of brainwaves, responding in temporal coordination, almost as if they were dancing together, an invisible choreography that no one consciously planned. This synchrony is not just metaphorical or poetic. It is not just a beautiful way to describe emotional connection. It is real, literal, measurable through sophisticated neuroimaging techniques that allow scientists to observe the brain activity of multiple people simultaneously and compare the patterns. When you listen to someone tell an engaging story, narrating events with emotion and detail, the same areas of your brain that are active in the narrator's brain begin to activate in yours, with a small temporal delay of a few seconds. It's as if, through language, through storytelling, through the transmission of auditory and visual symbols, the two brains temporarily couple, sharing not only abstract information about facts and events, but also patterns of neural activation, internal states, qualities of experience that cannot be fully captured in words. This has profound and moving implications for how we connect with each other, for the real nature of human communication, for the deep meaning of empathy. We are not isolated in our own minds like separate computers processing data independently, with no real possibility of direct sharing. There is a porosity between brains, a capacity for resonance, for mirroring, for sharing, that goes far beyond the words spoken, beyond the explicit and superficial content of verbal communication. And this capacity for neural resonance is fundamental to true empathy, to deep communication that touches the heart, to the comforting feeling of not being alone in the world, of being seen and understood by other human beings in ways that transcend language. Think about how you feel when comforting someone who is suffering deeply, when you feel compelled to reach out to help, when you experience someone else's suffering as if it were your own. This ability to suffer with the other, to feel the pain of others as if it were your own, is the basis of compassion. It is the driving force behind every genuine act of altruism. It is what makes us human in the deepest sense of the word. And neural resonance, this capacity of our brains to tune in to the brains of others, is the fundamental mechanism that makes empathy possible, that allows us to transcend the barrier of the skin and experience the subjective reality of others as if it were our own. But this brain synchrony is not always beneficial. It is not always a path to connection and compassion. It can also be used for manipulation, for mind control, for the dissemination of toxic ideas and destructive behaviors. When you are repeatedly exposed to negative messages, to narratives of hate, to extremist ideologies, your brain begins to tune in to the brains of those who propagate these ideas. Your neural patterns begin to align with theirs. You begin to internalize beliefs and values that can be deeply harmful to you and to others. The mind is incredibly susceptible to external influences, especially when these influences are exerted in a subtle, constant, and repetitive way. That's why it's so important to protect your mind from toxic information. Surround yourself with positive and constructive people. Cultivate critical thinking and intellectual autonomy so that you can consciously choose which brains you want to synchronize with and which you want to avoid.
In an increasingly connected world, where we are constantly bombarded with information from all sides, where social media and recommendation algorithms selectively expose us to content that confirms our biases and isolates us in ideological bubbles, it is more important than ever to be aware of our vulnerability to brain synchrony, our natural tendency to tune in to the brains of others, even when those brains are leading us down dangerous paths. The ability to resist social influence, to think for yourself, to maintain intellectual and emotional independence is one of the most valuable skills you can cultivate in the modern age.
And the key to developing this skill is to understand how your brain works, how it connects with others, how it can be manipulated, and how you can protect it from harmful influences. Conversing with someone who truly listens, who is genuinely present with you, and not just politely waiting for their turn to speak or planning what they'll say next, there's an almost physical relief, a lightness that floods the chest, a feeling of being seen and understood that goes beyond logic or reason. Part of this happens because, literally, brains are entering into measurable neural synchrony. The other person isn't just listening to your words passively like a tape recorder. Their brain is internally recreating something similar to what you're experiencing, activating the same brain areas, resonating with the same patterns of neural activity. And this internal recreation, this neural mirroring, is what we call genuine understanding, real empathy, authentic human connection that nourishes the soul. The same fascinating phenomenon happens with music, this mysterious phenomenon that has accompanied humanity since time immemorial, found in every known human culture. When you hear a melody that touches you deep in your soul, that resonates with something indescribable inside you, the brain isn't just processing sounds passively as mechanical waves vibrating in the air. It's activating the same motor areas that would be activated if you were producing that music, playing that instrument, singing that melody with your own voice. It's as if, when listening to music, you're also playing it internally, silently, creating the music along with the musician in an invisible collaboration. And this shared activation between the musician and the listener is what creates that powerful feeling of connection, of transcendence, of being transported to another place beyond ordinary time and space, to a dimension where musician and listener temporarily merge.